What's going on, guys? Ahmed back with another video, my first official real return video back, and this will be a review of Me versus Myself, A Boogie's new double album, a follow-up to Artist 2.0, and easily the most anticipated listen for me personally of the entire year. So let's get straight into it. This album was very, very different. A lot of the leading singles kind of gave me pause, not necessarily because they were bad, but because they were a very different sound. A lot of different decisions were being made, stuff I had never heard before. And so I was definitely a little bit wary because it was a style that I'd never really heard from A Boogie. But then Water Drowning Part 2 came out, and a lot of my hope for this album was kind of refurbished. I really, really liked Drowning Part 2. I felt like from a creative standpoint, he really figured a lot of stuff out with that chorus, the verses, and even Kodak's verse was, I'm not the biggest fan of Kodak, but Kodak really came in and snapped. So going into it, I was a little bit concerned, but overall, or a little bit curious, but overall pretty excited. And man, was I right about the sort of out there creativity. This was a double album, and so quickly I'll just kind of talk about what I think of the concept was and how I think that plays into the overall album. So one thing is I do feel like with this was a double album, but it was out of order. So you kind of had to go on his Instagram to see which side was which. I do really wish that there was like it was a separate one side and one side. Kind of with Pusha T's album, I wish they just separated those. If you're gonna have it be a double album, have the two halves sort of be two halves. But I think the concept was, sort of A Boogie being his more rapping and more typical persona, the thing that we've kind of seen from A Boogie throughout the years. And Artist was kind of his more creative side that pulled a lot more from R&B instrumentation, and just generally more out there and creative choruses. I that is my perception um of the sort of double album dynamic. You got more Afro beats, more R&B production on the more artist side, and then more trap inspired stuff on the A Boogie side, which overall made for an interesting listen. So yeah, let's get straight into it. From a writing perspective, I really like that he kind of kept the writing kind of static. He didn't really bring in any new themes. He was a little bit more street on this album, which I'm not really used to, but I didn't really mind that. I feel like if A Boogie's gone through those experiences, then he has the right to talk about them. I really liked on Water 2.0 where he's like, 50 Cent told me how to rob, but you could call me baby baby like I'm Biggie Smalls. I really like that kind of call to, prior New York artists. I really enjoyed a lot of the bars on here. A lot of the slick talk, a lot of the Amiri Jean stuff, that flexing talk that I personally, I'm always gonna love it. I'm always gonna like it when, you feel me, when black man flexing, you feel me. That's always gonna be a win in my book. And he found interesting pockets and ways to deliver it, so I'm always here for it. And then of course, you have the more artist tracks, which are a bit more emotional. And he really got to a deep place, I think, and really got specific when describing his emotions and his feelings. And I think from like a song to song standpoint, this was like a escapade on what, when I say lyrical focus, this is really, really, really what lyrical focus looks like. You have Damn Homie, and it's about, a dude who I think either played him or snitched on him, but you have the whole song thematically in that, right? You have Emotions where he's talking about what it's like to open up to a girl, right? And so, from a lyrical focus standpoint, he's very poignant on which song is about which thing, which I always really appreciate. So that was, of course, really, really great. And yeah, overall, I would give the writing a great. There was no like crazy complex punchlines. Everything was pretty easy to understand. No like kind of crazy rhyme schemes, but a lot of lyrical focus. And what we've typically heard from A Boogie up to this point from a writing perspective was there. And of course, I'm an A Boogie fan. I really enjoyed that. So Yeah. From a flow and I put flow and vocals kind of together in this sense. It was a bit weird. Vocally, A Boogie is doing a lot more runs and is just doing a lot more things that I've never heard from him before, and it was a very experimental album in that sense. There was a lot of flows that I wasn't used to, a lot of stuff that he was trying for the first time. Things like Money Conversations and Turn Off the Radio were very different. Take Shots also was songs like that, just very out there and different from what I've heard. I think some of it landed, some of it different didn't. I think some stuff like the flows on Money Conversations or the vocals on Take Shots didn't really quite hit for me, but stuff like Emotions really hit for me. The rapping on Water and that kind of like sort of whisper, you think I was born like that, kind of like within the chorus, this kind of like lowering of the volume that he did, that stuff did work for me. So it was kind of hit or miss. Some of the stuff really kind of snapped and clicked. Some of the stuff I'm like, I don't hate it, but it didn't hit me personally. um but a lot of it just felt very the big thing with this was that a lot of it felt very different. There were a couple of flows that I really was not a fan of, a couple songs where he was just frankly kind of tripping over himself when it came to his flows, and there was less of those pockets where A Boogie was in, where he was like, "Oh man, this is one of them pockets." For me personally, so I think that's why the flow was a bit of a letdown for me personally. But again, vocally, he was good as ever, and he was more creative, which I think is a really nice thing to do. I feel like so often, we complain that artists like Polo G or DaBaby are sort of or Drake are sort of rehashing the same thing over and over and over again and not really giving us a new sound. And I feel like A Boogie really works to deliver a new sound from that vocally, and I feel like that was a really strong attempt, and a lot of it landed. Some, like I said, some of it didn't. So overall, I'm gonna give it a good. On the flows and vocals perspective, I think it was between, like, I feel like the flows were kind of mid overall, but the vocals for what he did and what he experimented with, I would put it as a great. So it kind of comes together as a good. Production and creativity. So this is kind of where stuff really kind of gets interesting. I've always enjoyed A Boogie production, whether he was on trap inspired stuff or guitar, more orchestral stuff. I've always kind of enjoyed it. This was kind of the first time where the production was definitely a little bit of a letdown. The amount of hi-hats and drums, just kind of, the album felt very overproduced in a lot of ways. And there wasn't enough interesting sounds to kind of deal with all the hi-hats and the drums that we kind of hear in a lot of modern trap production. And so the production was a bit of a letdown for me, but creatively, I have to say, it almost felt like A Boogie was like, dang, I got all these little kids sounded just like me, so I gotta switch it up even more. And creatively, he really kind of, brought a different level of ingenuity and sonic, soundscape to what he was doing. It really, especially in songs such as Emotions, it was almost like a trance that he put you in, and it was very different. But definitely, an overall enjoyable experience. Again, from a creative perspective, I've never heard an album that sounds like this. I feel like he had every right to stay comfortable, given he is sort of the progenitor of this melodic rap sound from New York, but he didn't. He blew up his sound. He made it completely different from everybody else on the market, and sort of, again, just like he was in 2016 and 2017, being that innovator, being the person who pushes the sound forward. So overall, I would definitely give the production and creativity an overall great rating. I feel like the production was just good. It wasn't great or anything, but the creativity was amazing. So for me, it kind of sort of comes in the middle as a great. So now let's talk about the features. And this is where I was kind of most impressed by Boogie. There weren't a lot of features on this album, but every single one of them seemed to show out in ways that I did not expect. He had Lil Durk on this album twice. Both times he killed it. 24 Hours has really, really grown on me since the last time I heard it. Kodak Black, like I said, Drowning Part Two. I came in with Able Gimpy a beat. Like he really came with the flows, and some of the bars he was spitting was kind of fired. It was a definitely. I mean, it's a Kodak verse, so there's definitely gonna be some of them questionable bars that you get with a Kodak verse. But nothing to me too out of the ordinary from what Kodak normally spits. But he really did his thing, and he had a couple lines on there. Dirk killed it. Her, oh my goodness, her absolutely killed it. I feel like with these kind of R&B melodic rap bags, it's kind of like an easy dub for the R&B guys or the R&B girlies in this case, because their vocals are just superior, and so it sounds like a breath of fresh air. There's kind of that effect. But on the song "Play It," that was a beautiful, beautiful song. Obviously, it samples another R&B song, which is a big thing that I kind of liked throughout the record. Was that there was a lot of traditional R&B sounds throughout the record, especially on the artist side, that were really interesting. I think he even sampled some like Neo stuff, which Neo is my favorite artist. So it was really interesting to kind of see that transpire. But on Play, her really, really did her thing. And so I think while the feature list was and Roddy Ricch, I really much enjoyed him. I really enjoyed him on Better Ride Out. He had a pretty solid verse. The only reason I'm not going to give this a perfect rating is because I do feel like Tory Lanez, I don't know, like ever since What's Poppin', like What's Poppin' was fire, but since then I feel like Tory Lanez has been a bit of a letdown on features, especially melodic features. Like, I feel like Tory Lanez's voice, when his rapping voice was a bit too coarse for the sort of softness of the song, and even his singing to me wasn't really up to snuff, in my opinion. So Tory Lanez kind of bumps it down to just an amazing rating, but genuinely there weren't a lot of features on here, so the amazing doesn't impact his overall score for me too much, but it was definitely a highlight of the record to see all these guys really come together and kill it. Again, Dirk especially. Dirk really went back to back. It kind of felt like what was on that Favi album with Quavo, where it's like, Quavo was asked to do two different things, from Magic City to Through the Fire, and he just is killing both. Dirk asked to be on Damn Homie, then 24 Hours, and then he's on the A Boogie side and the artist side, and he just knocks both of them out of the park. Absolutely fire. So yeah, features I would definitely give it amazing. Like I said, I would have given it a perfect, but I feel like Roddy Ricch, it was good, but it could have been better. Overall musical execution, I'm sort of waiting to sort of feel to sort of feel out this album from that perspective. I think overall musically it came together pretty well. I'm definitely going to be downloading quite a few songs from this album. Definitely Bounce Back. Water 2.0 has been on repeat. Emotions, as I said earlier, Players definitely going to be on here. And overall, the concept was pretty cool. I really enjoyed sort of him being more in his creative bag, because I feel like that is how we push the sound forward. That is how we improve. We don't just kind of rest on our laurels and do things that we know will get sales. I really enjoy that people are experimenting, and I thought that was really, really dope of him. And this is definitely one of the strongest double albums this year, and definitely from a New York artist, this is either the best double album this year from a New York artist, or the second best. I know Westside Gunn came out with a double album last year, but yeah, overall musical execution feels pretty good. I feel like some of the choruses I think have to grow on me a little bit. I wasn't too keen on all the choruses. And like I said, the production was a bit of a letdown. And so I'm not sure how I fully feel about like overall like the musical execution and whether or not it came together. I do know that it's very different, and I love uniqueness, and that definitely contributes to my feelings on the project. But I think overall I'm going to give the musical execution a good. Like I said, the choruses could have been a little bit stronger, or I should say more consistent. But yeah, overall, I'm gonna give this album a great, and I feel like this is definitely a nod, a positive feather cap in A Boogie's discography. I definitely feel like this adds to his discography, definitely doesn't detract. And I feel like double albums are very, very, very hard to pull off. You know what I mean? And I feel like A Boogie took two risks with this, not only making a double album, but making an album that was so out there and creative as this was. And I feel like he did a pretty good job of landing both of those feats. And so I definitely feel like this 100% um, pushes A Boogie's claim to King of New York, Best in New York, top artist in New York. Definitely pushes that argument further. I think this is definitely a positive sort of push in that right direction. And I just love the diversity that he is bringing, and I really hope that this album inspires other artists such as TJ, such as Tekka, such as J.I. the Prince to step up their vocals, but also to be more creative and think outside of the box. You know what I mean? But yeah, overall, really enjoyed this album. I may do a re-review of this album, whether it grows on me or it doesn't grow on me. It did just come out, a couple days ago. But I feel like I had a lot of time to sit with the album, and I feel pretty good about how I feel about it. And I really feel like A Boogie, like I said, he did his thing, and I gotta give him props for being creative and landing it. That one of my rules is I feel like you only get props for being creative if you land it, and I feel like he did a solid job of landing it. And so overall, I'm gonna give this album definitely a great rating. Yeah, next up will be K Flock's album that I will be reviewing. Then is going to be Artists of the Artists, and then Album of the Year, and all that good stuff. So stay tuned. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the album. Did you like it? Did you hate it? How did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy that it was a double album? All right, peace, y'all.